All right, let's dive right in. Because the story of what went down in Florence, at the end of the 15th century, it's not just some dry history lesson. No way. It's a full-on political thriller. I mean, we're talking about a wild 40-year ride of pure chaos, wild prophecies, and a revolution that totally turned the city on its head. It honestly reads like a script for the next big streaming hit.
So check this out. We've got this really modern-sounding summary of the whole thing. And what's so fascinating is how, simple it sounds. A medicine family gets kicked out by a crazy priest who then creates a religious democracy only to have the Pope step in and install a first president. I mean, come on. A medicine family? A crazy priest? It sounds less like a history book and more like a meme someone cooked up, right?
And that, right there, is the big question for us today. Could something so huge, a 40-year revolution, really be boiled down to something that simple? So that's what we're going to do in this explainer. We're putting that little story to the test. We're going to walk through everything, the rise and fall of these incredible powers, from the fancy palaces right down to the streets. And we're going to see if this crazy-sounding narrative actually holds water.
Okay, first up, the medicine family's decline. So our story really kicks off with this so-called medicine family. You probably know them as the Medici. And look, to get why Florence was basically a powder keg waiting to blow, you've got to understand this system they built, and, more importantly, why it was all starting to fall apart.
So, here's the thing you have to get about the Medici. They weren't kings, they weren't emperors. On paper, Florence was a republic, a city of the people. But in reality, it was what historians call a crypto-tyranny. That's a fancy way of saying it was a tyranny hiding in plain sight. The Medici family, the medicine family, were basically puppet masters. They ruled from the shadows, pulling all the strings with their insane banking wealth.
So you're probably asking, how did they pull this off? Well, they had a pretty slick method, basically a 4-step playbook. Step 1, control the bank. And not just any bank, the most powerful bank in Europe. That's your leverage. Step 2, use that cash to control the guys who pick who gets to run for office. Step 3, make sure only your friends, your allies, get those top jobs. And step 4, boom. You rule the city with an iron fist, all without ever needing a crown. It was genius, really.
But like all great empires, things started to go wrong. By 1492, the whole system was showing some serious cracks. The bank, it was hemorrhaging money thanks to a bunch of bad loans. The only thing really holding the whole Medici machine together was the personality of one guy, Lorenzo the Magnificent. He was the glue. So when he died that year, everything fell apart. Suddenly they had no money and no leader, and that left a huge, dangerous power vacuum right in the middle of Florence.
All right, Section 2, a prophet's fiery rise. And you know what they say about vacuums? Nature abhors them. Stepping right into that void is a man who is the polar opposite of the Medici in every single way. A guy who wasn't offering parties and art, but fire, brimstone, and the wrath of God. I mean, just look at this contrast. On one side, you've got the Medici court. We're talking lavish parties, funding incredible art, living in total luxury, playing politics like a chess game. And on the other side, you have this guy, Girolamo Savonarola, a friar who, get this, wore a painful hair shirt under his robes, was constantly preaching about the end of the world, and claimed he had a direct line to God. He was literally the anti-Renaissance.
And from the pulpit of the main cathedral in Florence, this guy delivered sermons that were just electric. I mean, people were captivated. This wasn't your sleepy Sunday morning stuff. He was prophesying doom. He thundered that a sword of the Lord was coming, swift and soon, to punish Italy for all its sins. And guess who he blamed for those sins? Yep, the Medici and their whole pagan love of art and culture.
And then, the unthinkable happened. His prophecy came true. In 1494, the King of France invades Italy, just like he said. The sword of the Lord was here. Lorenzo's son, Piero, who was, let's be honest, not nearly as sharp as his dad, totally panicked. He just handed over Florence's most important fortresses to the French. The people of Florence went absolutely ballistic. For them, this was all the proof they needed. The crazy priest wasn't crazy at all. He was a prophet. And just like that, the Medici were chased out of town, their palace completely ransacked.
So, next up, the Republic of Virtue. The Medici are gone. And who's left holding all the cards? Savonarola. He's the only game in town, and he doesn't waste a second. He starts building this totally new, totally radical kind of state, a religious democracy. The goal? To turn Florence, the heart of the Renaissance, into a new Jerusalem on earth. The core of this new republic was something called the Great Council, or the Concilio Maggiore. And this was a big deal. It was a legislative body that gave about 3,000 citizens a vote. Now, I know 3,000 doesn't sound like a huge number to us today, but you have to put it in perspective. For the 15th century, this was revolutionary. It was a wildly democratic move that put real political power into the hands of way more people than ever before.
So who was in charge? Who was the head of state? A president? A duke? Nope. Savonarola went on record and declared that the one true official king of Florence was Jesus Christ. And I'm not kidding. This wasn't some symbolic gesture. This was the literal constitutional basis of their new government. God's law was now the law of the land. Period.
You know, what's really wild is that this whole playbook, it's not a one-off. It's happened again. Just look at the parallels to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. It's uncanny. You've got a worldly, Western-friendly regime, the Medici bankers, the Shah, overthrown by a charismatic religious leader. Both revolutions create these morality police, these youth brigades to control society. Both have a massive cultural purge, the bonfire of the vanities, the Cultural Revolution. And both define themselves by having a big, powerful foreign enemy. For Savonarola, it was the Pope. For Khomeini, it was the USA. It's like history repeating itself.
And the absolute high point, or maybe low point, of this whole cultural purge was the legendary bonfire of the vanities. Savonarola had these squads of young boys, his fancioli, going door to door collecting anything they considered a vanity. We're talking mirrors, cosmetics, fancy clothes, musical instruments, priceless works of art, books, anything that represented the old way of life. They dragged it all into the main square, built this huge pyramid out of it, and on Shrove Tuesday, 1497, they lit the whole thing up. It was a massive, fiery up-yours to the entire Renaissance.
Okay, next up, the Pope strikes back. Now, you can't just build a radical theocracy in the middle of Italy and expect nobody to notice. By trying to create his own personal city of God, Savonarola had picked a fight with a very, very powerful enemy. The one man who believed he was God's only true representative on earth, the Pope.
And we're not talking about just any Pope here. This was Pope Alexander VI. You might know him by his family name, Borgia, Rodrigo Borgia. He was a brilliant, ruthless politician who cared way more about power than piety. He was the total opposite of the austere Savonarola. And their beef wasn't just about religion. Oh no, this was geopolitics. Savonarola was Team France. The Pope? He was building a holy league specifically to kick the French out of Italy. Florence was caught right in the middle.
So, when Savonarola just flat out refused to join the Pope's anti-French league, the Pope decided to drop the hammer. He threatened Florence with an interdict. Think of this as the Pope's nuclear option. It was an economic and a spiritual death sentence. It meant no church services, no baptisms, no marriages, no last rites. But even worse for a city of bankers and merchants, it meant that any country could legally seize any Florentine property or goods on their soil. It was an attack on Florence's soul and its wallet.
The whole thing came crashing down in, well, one of the weirdest scenes in history. To prove once and for all that he was backed by God, a trial by fire was set up. One of his followers was supposed to walk through flames. But the whole day was a mess of arguments and delays, and then, right when it was supposed to happen, a massive downpour starts. The rain puts out the fires. The crowd had been waiting all day for a miracle, and all they got was wet. They felt totally ripped off. And all that pent-up frustration from years of his strict rule just exploded. In a flash, their faith was gone, and the mob turned on him.
And just like that, it was over. Savonarola was arrested. They tortured him until he confessed that all his prophecies were a lie. And then, on May 23, 1498, they took him out to be executed. And here's the final, gut punch of an irony. They hanged him and burned his body in the very same square, on the very same spot where he had built his bonfire of the vanities. The revolutionary was consumed by the fire he started.
So we enter the final act. A duke ends the dream. The crazy priest is dead, but his big idea, that great council, the heart of the republic, it actually survived. The next 14 years were just chaotic, a constant power struggle. Until finally, the Medici family saw their chance to come back. And this time, they had the Pope's backing to perform one last, decisive surgery on the city of Florence.
And man, those next few years were just a total roller coaster. The Medici get back in power in 1512 with a papal army. Then, they get kicked out again in 1527. But in 1530, they come back for good. This time, they had another Medici in the Pope's chair, and he made a deal with the most powerful man in Europe, the Holy Roman Emperor, to bring an army and just crush the Florentine Republic, once and for all.
So how did they make sure this time it would stick? They did something very, very clever. In 1532, they installed Alessandro de Medici with this bizarre, contradictory new title, Duke of the Florentine Republic. Think about that. Duke of a republic. It makes no sense, right? And that was the point. It created a permanent hereditary ruler, basically a first president for life, while still pretending the republic existed. It was the move that officially finally killed Florentine democracy.
And that brings us all the way back to the beginning. That little summary we started with, the medicine family and the crazy priest, turns out it was pretty darn accurate. You had a medicine family overthrown by a crazy priest who built a religious democracy, which was then crushed with the help of the Papette to install a first president. It all checks out. But it leaves us with one last kind of hunting question to chew on. In the end, did the medicine family live up to their name and actually cured the city of its fever of liberty? Or did they just kill the patient?